Let me first give all praise and all honor to the God of my ancestors, the God of Africa, the Almighty Amen Ra. This is your brother Radio 1 coming back at you again with another video of truth and historical reality. Now, the name of this video is Garfield Reid is a slave to white racist teachings. Yes, that's what we're going to be talking about today, and that is a fact. Now, why do I say this? Because Garfield Reid is falling for the same white racist teachings that have been trying to whitewash the ancient Egyptians for years. And he is given into the same white racist teachings that have been disrespecting, slandering, and degrading Africans for years. Yes. And the main source for this white racist teachings is genetics and DNA. Yes. And a little background on Garfield Reid. Well, first of all, he is a novice. Okay, he is a novice. He's only been on the scene for 3 or 4 years. Okay, he does not know what the hell is going on. He does not know what he's talking about, and he does not know what he is getting himself into. Okay, about 10 years ago, I was in your same shoes, Garfield Reid. Yes, I was also a student of genetics. I was a member of the Egypt Search research team on EgyptSearch.com forum. But later on, I got out of it. I no longer study or entertain genetics anymore because I did not like the direction genetics was going. Okay? And the direction I saw genetics taken was giving a false and disrespectful history of Africa. Okay? The same white racist pseudo interpretation of Africa that was going on back in the 1700s. Yes, that's the direction I saw DNA and genetics was going with Africa. That's why I no longer entertain genetics. And I'm glad I got out. Okay, I'm glad I got out of studying genetics because now I am able to focus more on real history. Okay, real original history that was left to us by the ancients. And I'm able to do that because I'm no longer wasting my time with genetics. So you have to understand, genetics, this field of genetics has its origin in neo-Nazi Germany during the age of scientific racism, during the age of Hitler. Okay? During the time when they were using genetics in science or pseudoscience, trying to prove that the white race was superior to the black race. They were using genetics to prove that the black race were inferior and the white race was superior. Yes. They were doing this in labs, in science labs, using genetics and all that. Okay? And all this crazy mess with studying bones and the size of heads and nonsense. Proving that the Negro race is inferior and the white race is superior with bone structure and crazy genetic studies. That's what you're getting off into, brother. And you need to do some research, some hard research on this field before you get off into it. Because I'm telling you right now, it's the direction it's taken is not good. It is not good at all. Okay? See, me, I am an independent researcher. As a black man, you have to be an independent researcher. Or otherwise, you're just a slave to the white man's teachings. You're just a coon to the white man's teachings. And you being a slave to these white racist teachings, you're going to be a coon and don't even know it because you're following these white racist teachings. Okay? You're going to be agreeing with things that you used to disagree with. That's the reality of following these white racist teachings. And I'm glad I got out of it. Okay? Now, and also, okay, you're following history given to us during slavery and after slavery. You have to be cautious in accepting history that was given to us during slavery and after slavery. Because me personally, I feel that the history that is being taught to us in the white interpretations on Africa during slavery and after slavery is false history. That is the false history that degrades Africa, okay, and disrespects Africa. So you got to be careful in accepting history, the history of Africa that's being taught during slavery and after slavery. Now, me personally, I feel that the history of Africa that was written before slavery is the true history of Africa. Because it's nothing but respect, even when you deal with the ancient Greeks. The ancient Greeks highly respected and honored the ancient Africans. Okay? They bragged about the ancient Africans more than anybody. See, but later on, during slavery and after slavery, all we get is disrespect and slander and degrading of Africans. So you have to be careful in accepting these teachings today. Okay? Because the white racist slave master is the same. He was the same yesterday. He's the same today. He's going to be the same tomorrow. But let's move on. Okay? So that's why you have to be careful in accepting these white racist teachings. Okay? Say, for example, on the plantation, what did they tell the slaves? Slavery is good. They even used the Bible to justify it. Okay? Forget about freedom. Slavery is good for you. You're doing it for God. God encourages slavery. They used the Bible to justify that. And some of the slaves fell for it. But some of the slaves wasn't buying it. Okay? The ones that wasn't buying it was like myself. I'm not buying it. Okay? Say, the hell with the Bible. The hell with slavery. I want freedom. That's what they were saying. Okay? The white man saying, no. Forget about freedom. Be a slave. Obey the Bible. And Garfield, that's what you're doing today. The white man's telling you, oh, forget about history. Okay? Forget about history. Go with DNA. Listen to DNA. DNA has all the answers. Genetics has all the answers. Forget about history. And that's what you're doing. You forget about history and you're being a slave to the white man's racist genetics and DNA studies. Pseudo-DNA studies. Because it's all late. And if it's too late, it's too fake. It's all late history and late interpretations of history that goes back 3,000 years ago. So, I myself, I am a rebel scholar. I am an independent researcher. I say, no, the hell with DNA. I'm going to history. Just like the slaves said, no, the hell with slavery in the Bible. I want freedom. I'm saying the hell with DNA and the white man's racist teachings. I'm going with real history. So be careful in following these teachings, Garfield. Because it's going to make you say some things that you're going to regret. It's going to make you act like a coon and not even know it. Because you're following their teachings. Try Okay? If you don't want to let go of genetics, fine. But try to balance it out with history. Don't try to come on the turf of history and say that genetics has all the answers. No, it doesn't work like that. Okay? When dealing with history, history comes first. Genetics comes second. Yes. That's what you have to understand. Okay? Even Dr. Shamarka Keita, okay? The geneticist, okay? The certified geneticist, Shamarka Keita, said that genetics does not have all the answers. Okay? Stop acting like genetics is so perfect. Okay? Genetics also has its flaws. And you also have dishonest geneticists. Yes, that's a fact. Shamarka Keita said if you want to know about history, go read and study history. Don't look to genetics for all the answers. Because you're not going to get all the answers from genetics. That's even coming from a geneticist himself. And I myself, I'm not a geneticist. I'm more of a pro-historian. And I get offended when geneticists don't stay in their lane. You try to come over to the historical side and saying that, no, my genetics has all the answers. Your historical sources are pseudo. No, it doesn't work like that. I'm not going to let you get away with that. Okay? Genetics and historical are two different categories. Okay? Two different categories. Now, and since you want to say that we are not Egyptians, okay, black Americans are not Egyptians. But did you know that according to recent DNA studies, that people, mummies with Middle Eastern or Asian, Western Asian DNA is Egyptians according to DNA study? Most recent DNA study done by the Max Planck Institute that I made a video on and exposed. And it tried to say that mummies with Middle Eastern DNA were Egyptians. And these Egyptians were related to Middle Easterners from Iran and in the Levant. But still, but the point is, although their DNA was Middle Eastern, they still labeled them Egyptians. See, Garfield, what you have to understand is a lot of these haplogroups and all that in the field of genetics, it's nothing but labels. Nothing but false labels. Putting them, like, you can just take an empty soda bottle, okay, an empty soda bottle with no label on it, and put any label you want on it and be what you want it to be. That's what's going on. They're making whoever they want to be Egyptian. Okay? It can have Chinese DNA. If they want it to be Egyptian, they're going to make it Egyptian. So who are you to say who's not Egyptian and who's Egyptian? Can't do that. Okay? Because they're nothing but labels. Even when we deal with labels such as Afro-Asiatic, Niger-Congo, Nilo-Saharan, those are false labels that was made up and coined by white racist scholars of the modern age. Has nothing to do with ancient history. Okay? Nothing to do with that. When we deal with Afro-Asiatic, Niger-Congo, those terms was coined by a white man named Wilhelm Bleek. So when you use those terms, that's who you're being a slave to. Okay? Afro-Asiatic. What is Afro-Asiatic? Egypt is in Africa. The Nile is in Africa. What is Niger Congo? The Niger was once called the Nile. The Niger does not flow through the Congo. What is Nilo-Saharan? Is Egypt also on the Sahara and on the Nile? So should Egypt also be called Nilo-Saharan instead of Afro-Asiatic? See, nothing but fake terms, false labels. That's all it is. It means nothing. That's why you can't mix your pseudo-DNA studies with historical reality. Okay? Because it makes no sense. And you can twist it however you want to twist it. But I'm not going to let you get away with that. Okay? And did you know, Garfield? Okay, according to DNA, they're saying, according to DNA, Eurasians 2,000, 3,000 years ago were in West Africa and were in South Africa, all over Africa. But although history does not support this, I don't know where this is coming from, but history, written history, real written history does not support this, but DNA is saying this. Yes, it is saying that Eurasians, now Eurasians are Caucasians. Eurasians were in West Africa, were in South Africa. That's what DNA is saying. So, according to DNA, Eurasians and Caucasians can be in West Africa, but no Egyptians were in West Africa. But Eurasians and Caucasians can be in West Africa. Are you going to accept that, Garfield? Are you saying that Eurasians and Caucasians were in West Africa and no Egyptians were there? Huh? Because that is what DNA is saying. But when we go with history, history does prove that Egyptians were in West Africa. Cushites were in West Africa. Okay? Do you even know about the trans-Saharan caravan roads that went from Egypt to West Africa? Who you think started that? Who you think created those caravans? It was Egyptians and Cushites from Egypt who crossed the desert and went to West and reached West Africa and started those caravan roads. Do you even know that? See, a lot of you don't even know that because you do not study. You're wasting your time on these white racist pseudo-genetics. These white racist teachings. Yes. You don't even know that. And I have the records, and I'm going to prove it on my new channel in future videos. And Garfield, you're more than welcome to come and learn something. Because you definitely need to learn something. Okay? You're in the learning process, and as far as I'm concerned, you're taking the wrong path following these genetic studies. Yes, because genetics is saying that the ancient Egyptians were Caucasian, they were Middle Eastern, and it is also saying that Caucasians and Eurasians were in West Africa and South Africa. That is what genetics is saying. Look it up. If you don't believe me, look it up. Just type in Eurasians in West Africa or Eurasians in Yoruba land. That's what it's saying. I mean, the field of genetics is a mess. It is a mess. It needs to be reevaluated and it needs to be fixed. A lot of these haplogroup migrations and back migrations, they're based on theories. Even when you go to Wikipedia and you look up a haplogroup, it says, when you look at the origin of the haplogroup, it says possible place of origin, meaning they're not sure what origin that haplogroup comes from. Okay? And a lot of those haplogroups had nothing to do with a back migration. They have always been, those Africans have always been there. They're indigenous. Even Dr. Shamar Kakita in Rick Keel's spoke of this. Okay? At least they're in the field trying to correct some of this madness that's going on in the field of genetics. But Garfield, you're taking the wrong path when you say the genetics has all the answers. No, it doesn't. Genetics is not perfect. And the geneticist is not always honest. There are some deceitful geneticists out there. Even when the geneticist, Loring Brace, he did a DNA study saying that the ancient Egyptians were more closer to Middle Easterners and Mediterranean people than they were to Africans. But Dr. Shamar Kakita and Rick Keatles had to come along and correct that study and found many falsehoods in that study and corrected it and saying no, that this was not true. But now, we're going to be cutting it short soon, okay? But Garfield, okay? But since you say that we black Americans and West Africans are not the descendants of ancient Egyptians, then my question to you is, who is? The burden lies on you to prove who are the descendants of ancient Egyptians. If it's not us, now on my new channel, I'm going to prove that West Africans have more to do with ancient Egypt than any other group of Africans on the continent. I'm going to prove that. Yes, because Egypt did fail. Okay? But even before it failed, during the time when Egypt was at its prime of power, it sent out colonies to West Africa and all other parts of Africa. Yes. Stop treating Egypt like it was this primitive civilization where people just stood still and went nowhere. No. Egypt was just like the Persian Empire. It was just like the Assyrian Empire. It was just like the Islamic Arab Empire. It was just like the Roman Empire. But the only difference, it was before all that. Egypt was the first empire to send out colonies and make conquests. That's what you have to understand. And that's what I'm going to prove on my new channel. Okay? But yeah, the burden is on you to prove who are the descendants of the ancient Egyptians, if it's not us. I'm going to prove that it's definitely us. Okay? We're not taking a back seat on anything. And I'm willing to debate any East African, Somalian, Eritrean, Ethiopian, anybody, which I have already debated, and many of them ran. I'm willing to debate any one of them on this topic. Because Egypt did fail, and East Africa did betray the pharaohs. See, but if you knew the history, you understand that. But you got to know the history to know that. And the question is, where did these people go? That's what I'm going to prove on my new channel. Yes. Where did these people go? Where did the descendants of Pharaoh go? I'm going to prove that they were in West Africa with contemporary sources, not late sources. Okay? I'm going to prove that. And also, when we deal with today, okay, the only people you see, Garfield, defending Kemit are African Americans and even some West Africans. You don't see the Ethiopians and the Sudanese and all of them defending Kemit. You don't see them wearing the Ankh because they know who the true descendants of Kemit are. You also should know who the true descendants of Kemit are. It's not out of coincidence that we are defending Kemit. It's in our blood. And I'm going to prove it. See, a lot of Somalians and Ethiopians, they talk a lot of nonsense. You just West African. You West Africans have nothing to do with Kemit. And they're following white racist pseudo teachings. They're not going by original history. But I'm going to prove that we have more to do with Kemit than any other Africans on the continent. Yes, you have to understand the history, the geography, the culture, everything about ancient Egypt to understand what was going on. Now, and also, when you say that we are just West African, Garfield, okay? You're saying that we're just West African because we came from West Africa. The land makes us who we are. Okay? So if you're going to do that, then you're guilty of doing the same thing that the Aboriginals are doing. You're guilty of doing the same thing Dane Calloway is doing. Yes. According to Dane Calloway, we are native indigenous to America because we live in America and we was born in America. And our mothers and fathers and grandfathers was born in America. So that makes us American. You're saying the same thing. The slaves in West Africa, they were, just because they were taken from West Africa, that makes them just West African. Okay? You're doing the same thing. So you have no business trying to attack the Aboriginals or the Abos and Dane Calloway when you're guilty of doing the same thing. Now, according to Dane Calloway, the crossing of the Atlantic from West Africa to America never happened. He's saying that we was always here. Well, guess what, Garfield? You're saying the same thing. You're saying that the crossing of the Sahara Desert from the Nile Valley to West Africa never happened. But we was always in West Africa. That's what you're saying. And you're wrong. Okay? See, there's this funny thing, or this funny pseudo-belief that the land makes you who you are. Even many Arabs that invaded Egypt and settled in Egypt and produced descendants in Egypt, those descendants of those Arabs are now calling themselves Egyptians. Why? Because they live in Egypt. Okay, you're doing the same thing. But I got the records to prove that, yes, the crossing of the Sahara did happen not once, but several times. From the Nile Valley to West Africa. Okay? Most West Africans in ancient times had ancestors from Egypt and Kush. That is a fact. Regardless of what your DNA says. Your DNA can never disprove that. But you have to study history. There's a lot of reading and studying to do, which you have not done. Yes, but I'm going to read something to you right quick. Okay? And I'm going to cut it short. Now, here is where is that at? Okay. Just give me a minute, family. Now, I'm going to read an account from the Tariq al-Sudan. Okay? Now, this is the first time where we get writings from the West Africans themselves. Okay? This predates everything you believe in, Garfield. Okay? All of your sources, your genetics, your African, griot, oral traditions and all that. Okay? This writing predates all that. And it's the Tariq al-Sudan. It was written in the 1500s AD by scholars from Timbuktu in Mali, in West Africa. Okay? But let me read what it says to you. Okay? And it says, just give me a minute. Okay? And it's talking about the origins of the Songhai and the Sanhaja people in West Africa. And it says, the Sanhaja trace their descent from Himyar and are not related to the Berbers except through marriage. They left the Yemen and journeyed to the Sahara, which is their home in the west. Okay? And there are all type of accounts saying that the ancestors of the Songhai came from Yemen. But we have to keep in mind that this was written by Islamic Africans. Okay? But listen to what it says. It says the Sanhaja or the Songhai. Okay? Same people. Sanhaja, Songhai, Sanaga, Senegal, same people. It's saying that the ancestors of the Songhai were Himyarites. Okay? Now the Himyar, they were a nation of Sabaeans. They were Sabaeans who converted to Judaism and became Jews. They were not even real Jews, which the Hebrew Israelites try to say that they were real Jews. No, they were not. They were converted to Judaism. Okay, but it is saying that the Himyar from Yemen in Arabia crossed the Sahara Desert and came to West Africa. Okay, now do you even know where Yemen is? Yemen is in southern Arabia. It is impossible to cross the Sahara Desert from Yemen. Yes, because there are 4 barriers that prevent it. First, you will have to cross the Red Sea to reach the coast of East Africa. Then you will have to cross the Eastern Desert to reach the Nile Valley. Then you will have to cross the Nile River to reach the west bank of the Nile. And then you will have to cross the vast Sahara Desert to reach West Africa. Makes no sense. Okay, so how in the hell that a group of Himyarites can cross the Sahara Desert and reach West Africa? It makes no sense. But yet you have people believing it. They believe that Jews from Yemen crossed the Sahara Desert directly from Yemen to West Africa. When geographically it makes no sense. But yet people believe it. So Garfield, so you mean to tell me Jews or Yemenites can cross the Sahara Desert and reach West Africa? Jews can cross the Sahara Desert and reach West Africa? Eurasians, according to your DNA study, can cross the Sahara and reach West Africa. But Egyptians and Cushites never cross the Sahara and reach West Africa? See how silly that sounds? When the only way you can reach West Africa from the east is from the Nile Valley. You can only cross the Sahara to reach West Africa from the Nile Valley, from the west bank of the Nile. You can't do that from Eurasia. You can't do that from Yemen. But you have all these fake pseudo sources saying that all these Arabian, Middle Eastern groups came, Jews and Israelites, came to West Africa, but no Egyptians and no Cushites were in West Africa. But when we get into the old sources, the original sources, it says otherwise. It does say that Egyptians and Cushites were the first people to migrate to West Africa. And I agree with you in saying that history has been exaggerated. I agree with that. Yes, history has been exaggerated. But what you're doing is not making it any better. You're not fixing it. You're making it worse. Because you're trying to attack the foundations. You're trying to attack the original sources. Okay, I don't have to do that. All I have to do is attack the liars. I really don't even have to attack the Bible. I can attack the people that's lying about the Bible. I can attack the people that's lying about history, that's lying about archaeology. We got too much of that going on. And trying to disprove the Bible and historical sources, well, you can do that within your own right, but you were not there. You were not there back in that time, so you really can't say. But we can attack, check, and debunk the liars today that's lying about those sources. We can do that. Yes. So, Garfield, Ngozi, all of you, okay? I'm going to hold it against you. Okay? I'm banning you from teaching history. I'm banning you from using words like Egyptian, Ethiopian, Cushite, Phoenician, all that, until you correct your teachings. You're not allowed to use those words. Because according to you, the sources that those words derive from are pseudo. If you're going to say that those sources are pseudo, then you're going to have to say the words are pseudo too. And you're going to have to go with that the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, the Cushites, they never existed. Okay? If you're going to go that area and say genetics has all the answers, well, then just stick to genetics and leave history out of it. Because it's not for you. It's not for you. Okay? Now, I can talk about history all day without even mentioning genetics, without even mentioning haplogroups, none of that. See, but when you talk about genetics, you want to entertain, you want to mix it with history. You want to mix it with the Egyptians, the Ethiopians. Those words derive from written historical sources. They do not derive from a genetic DNA study. That's why I say stay in your lane. Respect the scholar, respect the historian. When dealing with history, history comes first. Genetics comes after. Try to balance it out. Okay, when you try to say that you have honor for Dr. John Henry Clark, Yosef Inyakinen, Chancellor Williams, you say you have respect for them, but you don't. You don't. At the same time, you're spitting in their face. Because during their time, there was no genetics and DNA studies. Dr. John Henry Clark, Chancellor Williams, and all, they never entertained DNA and genetics. They never taught about DNA and genetics. That wasn't going on back then. All they had were the original written historical sources, archaeology and anthropology. That's all they had to use to go up against and refute the lies of white racism and white supremacy. They used what they had. Okay? They studied real history. And that's what they used to refute the many lies that was being told by white racists, including Sheikh Anti-Joke. He used the original historical sources to refute their lies. So you have to understand, the white racists have been fighting a long losing battle in trying to prove that the ancient Egyptians were Caucasians. Okay? On the historical side. Okay? Yes. On the historical side, they have been fighting a losing battle. They have lost the battle on the historical side in proving that the ancient Egyptians were Caucasians, when historical reality proves that the ancient Egyptians were indigenous black Africans. They lost that battle. But now, today, they are using DNA and genetics to try to make a comeback. So, and you're falling into it. That's what they're doing. They're using DNA and genetics to try to make a comeback, to try to recover from that losing battle. That's a battle they lost when we deal with the historical aspect of it. But now they're using DNA to make a comeback. Many of these DNA studies, they're entertained by white racists, even white racists like, okay, Richard Spencer. Okay? Richard Spencer and this other guy. Jared Taylor, Richard Spencer. Okay, two low-life, racist, lying devils. Okay, I was supposed to debate Richard Spencer on the Andy Warsky show, but he cowered out. I was also supposed to debate Jared Taylor because I know my knowledge of Kemit is far superior than theirs. And I was going to destroy them with the facts because they know nothing about Kemit. But these white racists, they use these genetic and DNA studies to support their claims. So that's what you have to watch out for. So Brother Garfield, try to balance it out. Okay? Stop acting like DNA and genetics has all the answers. DNA and genetics is the sole authority. No, it is not. Okay? So I'm going to end it there. And Garfield, brother, whatever spell you are under, snap out of it. Wake up, brother. Wake up. Wake up and recognize what is going on. And what you're doing is wrong. Okay? Now, when you were debunking and going against the Hebrew Israelites, I was with you all the way. I was with you all the way. But what you're doing now, when you're trying to put science and genetics before history and saying that science and genetics has all the answers and history is pseudo, historical sources is pseudo, no. You're wrong in doing that. So try to balance it out. Okay? And I'm sure that Jabari is going to teach you a lesson as well. You're going to learn some things from Jabari as well. But that's all I want to say. Okay? And I have to let you know, you are a slave to white racist teachings. And you need to fix it. You need to correct it. You need to correct it. And with that said, this is your brother Radio 1. Coming back at you again with another video of truth and historical reality. And until next time, Egypt stays in Africa. Peace and Amen Ra.